So first, I'm going to discuss bullfighting and then talk about sushi as a popular Japanese food that I think has been affected a lot by globalization. So first, on bullfighting, I think something that was really notable about the resistance movement to bullfighting is that a lot of the language and I guess like the ethical values that they talked about is something that is prevalent in a lot of Western countries, and I think that definitely indicates that globalization has had a really big impact on bullfighting and I guess the culture that surrounds it and the opinion of it, even within Spain. And I think another thing that was really interesting is that it was being criticized from the inside out versus from sort of a Western ideology, people criticizing it from the outside. And I think that indicates an interesting aspect of globalization that the hybridization essay talked about, namely the idea of like localism and how globalization kind of reinforces localism by allowing constituents of a particular population to reference and talk about things happening around the globe and sort of getting ethical values and morals from other places and using that language to help change their own communities rather than other countries stepping in and sort of changing things. And then, so I think something I'd like to talk about with regards to Japan is particularly sushi. And the history of sushi is that from the mid-18th century, there was someone named Hayano Yohei who started creating what we call sushi tei. And what's interesting is that it used to be very much just like fast food, and it was served next to a port. But it slowly became seen as an art form with sort of like different ways to create those really like small portions of fish. And so it became something that people would only serve in restaurants, be a lot more expensive and kind of a more like upper class food. But so the role that globalization plays in this is that Western countries became attracted to sushi because of its colorfulness, and they were just because of its artfulness, as like these little pieces of art. They're also very healthy, and so Western culture started to adopt it. But then the move but then sushi began to shift more towards fast food again because Western cultures started to have more of a focus on quantity rather than the quality of the fish, and the quality decreased. But the price range also changed, and sushi became a much cheaper option in a lot of Western countries and a more prevalent food. And that, in turn, influenced sushi back in Japan through things like tourism and immigration, where it became much more desirable to also have sushi in a sort of fast food way. And now, like in Japan, you can get sushi at supermarkets and like a lot of convenience stores, even. But I think that sort of indicates how globalization has overall definitely changed access to sushi and the way that people eat it. But I think it still also has preserved a lot of its original culinary tradition because people still come from all over to enjoy Japanese sushi in a very authentic way. And there's still a lot of very well-known sushi chefs in very like expensive restaurants where people enjoy like very good quality sushi in addition to things you can casually eat for like a dinner. I think what this indicates to me is that hybridization doesn't necessarily cause uniformity, but rather it can kind of refigure cultural identity, kind of like what the essay was talking about. And it not definitely doesn't just I think it reinvents traditions and allows them to shift with globalization, not necessarily in a way that causes it to sort of die out, but rather just change in a different way. And it's not always a power struggle. I think this is an instance of globalization where it wasn't necessarily sort of like a certain country or culture dominating another, but rather the mixing of different cultures and sort of ways of life that allowed something like sushi to have more of a global identity. It definitely completely changed the international fishing market, and I think that was at least one negative effect of the globalization of sushi is that there became a lot of overfishing, and that has definitely had a negative impact on the environment. But in general, I think the culture surrounding sushi has been, I would say, like enhanced or at least changed and shifted through the impacts of globalization.